Does the Galileo Movement wax the facts? Part 1. In my last video, I looked at what we could learn about the solar system through simple observations without a telescope, a process that had been performed centuries before by Copernicus. Copernicus established that the Earth orbited the Sun and rotated on its axis. Galileo became a strong supporter of Copernicus. In this video, I'm changing gears from astronomy to responding to a video called Axe the Tax, put out by a group calling themselves, of all things, the Galileo Movement. A group formed by two old-age pensioners with Alan Jones as their patron. In this video, we'll look at the question, does the Galileo Movement wax the facts? The term wax has a number of meanings. One is to describe the moon growing larger before it wanes. Like the surface of the moon are some facts illuminated in their video, whilst others that are perhaps more important kept hidden. Second definition of wax: something suggestive of moulding wax in being impressionable or readily moulded. Are the facts being used like putty? And third, an older usage of the word means a fit of rage or temper. Certainly Alan Jones goes off on a short rant at the end of their video. A rant not supported by the facts presented in their video, I might add. The main argument presented in Axe the Tax is an argument from small numbers. It goes, step 1. Carbon dioxide is less than 0.04% of air. Step 2. Man's production of carbon dioxide is only 3%. And step 3. Australia's contribution is 1.3%. Let's look at step 1. Trouble is that the carbon dioxide levels in the air are going up at an ever-increasing rate. They went up by over 22% in the last 50 years and could go up a further 25% over the next. In Axe the Tax, the Galileo Movement showed that their argument, step 1, is really an argument from small numbers. Their video contains a screenshot equivalent to the one I've posted here. In it they used the 503 metre span of the Sydney Harbour Bridge to represent all the gases in the atmosphere and say that 0.04% of that is only 18 centimetres. 18 centimetres representing carbon dioxide's share. However, an argument from small numbers is inherently flawed. I do not know too many people that would drink a cup of water laced with arsenic, even if it only contained a few drops. And secondly, nitrogen and oxygen have no diluting effect. It is not the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that counts, but the gross amount. The Earth's atmosphere goes up a long way. At 120 kilometres above the Earth, the atmosphere becomes noticeable to spacecraft on re-entry. 0.04% of 120 kilometres is 48 metres. So carbon dioxide on its own would form a 48 metre thick blanket. That's almost up to the deck of the Harbour Bridge. That is a lot more than 18 centimetres. But it doesn't stop at the pylons. It spreads out in all directions around the whole Earth. Now that is a lot of carbon dioxide. So much for the argument from small numbers. Now we'll move on to the next part of this flawed argument. Step 2. Man's contribution is only 3%. In the diagram labelled carbon dioxide production and extraction, the large square labelled CO2 represents carbon dioxide in the environment. Man's production is represented by the red arrow top left. Nature's by the large green arrow on the left. The quantity nature extracts is shown by the green arrow on the right. Here we see that human emissions have upset the natural balance of the carbon cycle, as man produces carbon dioxide but does not extract it. Previously, nature took out of the environment what it put in, but man's contribution of 3% a year has led to a surplus accumulating each year. Part of this is absorbed by the ocean and another part accumulates in the atmosphere. turning our eye to the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Once again, I've used the Harbour Bridge as a baseline for our graph. Shown in green on the graph is the natural level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as at 1860. It took nature 4.5 billion years to get to 280 parts per million. Man's contribution since 1860, that's over just the last 150 years, accounts for an extra 111 parts per million, a massive increase of 40% and rising. That is an accumulation of over 1 million times faster than the average natural rate. Over a long period of time, prior to the Industrial Revolution, the natural production of carbon dioxide has virtually matched its extraction. This, however, does not mean that the atmospheric carbon dioxide level is held constant. The large mauve box in the diagram represents the total environment of sea and air containing carbon dioxide. This is then subdivided between the atmosphere and the oceans. In a facts page that was formerly on the Galileo Movement's website, they stated, "Driven by temperature, oceans release and absorb carbon dioxide. When the temperature of the ocean rises, the ocean releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as indicated by the red arrow on the diagram. When the ocean temperature falls, carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ocean as indicated by the blue arrow." We can see this process in action on the following graph. Here we have a graph which shows temperature in red and atmospheric carbon dioxide in blue over a time span of the last 800,000 years. The data comes from the ice core records. For the most part of this graph we see carbon dioxide tracking the temperature. Most of the change in carbon dioxide that we see here comes at the expense of the quantity of carbon dioxide dissolved in the oceans. Primarily prior to 1860, the carbon dioxide found dissolved in the oceans, when added to that found in the air, was relatively stable and not wildly varying. Now we'll consider the effect of man's additional 3% production per year. In the diagram, man's additional production is represented by the orange arrows. The main difference between this and the natural situation is that both the atmospheric carbon dioxide level and the carbon dioxide level of the oceans are rising. This proves that carbon dioxide is accumulating in the environment in recent years. Australia has 0.33% of the world's population, yet we produce a whopping 1.3% of the world's carbon dioxide each year. That is 4 times the world average. We know that the world's current output of carbon dioxide is doing harm, yet we are massively exceeding the average. Certainly if we are moral and good global citizens, then we should at the very least get our own house in order. Conclusion to Part 1. On examining the argument from small numbers, we found 1. That the carbon dioxide blanket is 48 metres thick. 2. Man's production of carbon dioxide has upset the balance of the carbon cycle, and its effect is the rapid accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. 3. We know that the current rate for producing carbon dioxide in the world is too high, yet our current production is running at 4 times this rate. That is, 4 times what was already too much. So their argument from small numbers gets a massive fail. Moreover, they have engaged in a process of hiding certain facts. They were quick to mention that man makes only 3% of the total carbon dioxide produced each year, but fail to mention that we don't extract any, leaving the 3% to accumulate. To restore the carbon dioxide balance in nature, we need to reduce our emissions. As to the main question, does the Galileo movement wax the facts? Yes, they do.